I'll start. Keep in mind this will use both my own memories and second-hand accounts from my parents who remember this incident. Be about 6 years old. Just began sleeping in my own room since we were able to move into a house that allowed for us to have our own room. Excited cause I felt like I was finally a big boy who can live on his own. First night feel hot, like very hot. Live in Texas so heat was not a rare issue, but this felt unbearable. Almost to the point of not being able to breathe. Just go to the living room to sleep and forget about it. Next night the heat returns. But this time feels less warm and more mean. My 6-year-old mind didn't know what malice was, so that was the best way I could describe it. Made me want to leave my room but I couldn't, something made me so scared that it got me frozen. Tried yelling for my dad but, almost like those dreams where you yell and nothing comes out, same thing here, but I knew I wasn't dreaming. Now here is where my memory gets fuzzy, so I am going to go off what my parents remember. Next day I go to my dad and tell him about the past 2 nights. He chalks it up to me being scared all alone in the dark. He decides that day to put a night light in my room and hopefully that helps. Comes into my room that night like he usually does, and this time he reads me a bedtime story all in hopes to calm me down. He leaves and seemingly that's the end of it. Fast forward to about 2 a.m. or so. The absolute worst blood-curdling scream he has ever heard comes from my room. So loud it actually wakes up the neighbors. My dad is not a fast man, but that day you swear he had super speed the way he was able to get to my room so fast. Our rooms were on opposite sides of the house. Dad basically breaks the door off its hinges and sees me on the floor crying and cowering for my life in a corner of the room. My dad goes on to explain how as soon as he went in he felt this pure aura of just anger and malice. Dad picks me up and bolts out of that room. Sleep with them for the next 2 nights. My dad doesn't talk about the room for those days, not wanting to scare me. Tells me that after that he talked to my mom about it. My mom, being religious and an avid believer in the paranormal, tells my dad it has to be some sort of spirit haunting the room. My dad, still skeptical, decides to say fuck it and sleep in the room himself, just to make sure he didn't just imagine it, since he was still groggy and half awake when he came into my room that night. Later that night he tucks me in with my mother and goes to sleep in my room. Next day we find him sleeping in the living room. Mom asks Dad what happened. He begins to go on this huge tirade about how the room made him feel nauseous and almost depressed. Said that the heat itself was bad, but that around 2 a.m. he felt almost suicidal, to the point of thinking to just turn on the car's gas and let it be. My father is not a depressive, nor has he ever had a history of such. Tells my mom that something is definitely fucked up about that room. My sister, she was about 17, hears my dad say this and, as most teenagers do, tend to not believe him, so she says she'll sleep in the room. Too much of my mother's dismay. Later that night my sister goes into my room. About 2 a.m. same as a last night and same as 2 nights before. She bolts out of my room. And I don't mean run, I mean she almost leaped out of the room with how fast she tried to leave. My mother tells me that she even caught my sister trying to leave the house entirely in a mess of sweat and tears. Later that night, after my sister calms down, my parents ask her what exactly happened. She goes on to explain that she had been touched by something, and not just the normal grazing feel or strange sensation, she means grabbed and groped. She explains that while the room itself became scorching hot, the touches felt like they were setting her on fire, burning her. She said that the pain may have been one thing, but the sheer feeling of anguish and despair she felt while it happened was on an entirely different level. She explained it as the feeling you get when someone you love dies, and you have to see their body in a casket. Of course, to my mother and father, they knew what that felt like, losing a parent and grandparent respectively. My mom finally tells us she wants to sleep in that room. Dad tells her to not and just call a priest or something. Mom says she wants to confirm it herself. Part of me thinks she just wanted to have a piece of the paranormal pie. That night we all go to bed and my mom goes into my room. Same verse as the first, second and third. 2 a.m. and shit hits the fan. This time we hear crashing and screaming. Dad once again runs into the room. Tells me to stay in their bed until he comes back. Can hear sister running to my room as well. Can hear talking but not real words can be made out. Later that day my mom explains what happened. Mom tells my dad she felt the exact same malice and anger that he and my sister did. Only this time she could feel a direction. She could tell where it was. She continued to explain that she just knew where it was sitting, or standing, or whatever. At first she left it be since it wasn't really trying to harm her. But then she told my dad something, and later to me, which to this day has never left our minds. She begins to tell my dad that not only was it there, but it spoke to her. Not the same quiet whisper my sister got, but full audible speech. She says the spirit began talking about my father first. Saying things like he only chose you cause you were the easiest, he only chose you because he needed a rebound, only reason he stayed was the kid. For context, I am my father's only child, my sisters were from a different marriage, etc. She then began saying the spirit talked about me, how he'll end up being buried by you, he'll never amount to anything because you'll never let him, etc. And this went on for maybe 30 minutes until she just lost it. My sister felt fear, my dad felt depression, I felt malice, my mother felt pure unfiltered anger. My mom isn't someone known for her temper, but when she is mad she's terrifying. This was one of those moments. Mom finally told my dad to call a priest to bless the house and exorcise any bad juju. Call a family friend who is also the priest at our local church. Priest comes in and immediately asks, "Can you show me your son's room?" My mother and my father never told him about the room. When asked why he wanted to start there first, the priest just said, "I think that's where I'm needed the most." My mom allows him in and leads him into my room. Priest stops. Almost frozen. Tells my parents that there is something evil. Something cruel in here. And as he said that, he turns to the corner of the room. Same place my mother told my dad she felt it. Priest points and says there, that is where it lives. It's no spirit, it's a demon. I don't know what brought it here nor why it resides in this exact area, but something about this land attracts it. Priest, as he says this, begins to set crosses and candles around the room, grabbing his holy water. Begins to pray and spread the holy water. As he's doing that, the whole room goes hot. Hotter than anyone has ever felt it. To the point where we were all drenched in sweat as this happened. Priest is praying and spraying at this point. Looked like a movie almost. The whole time it felt like something was struggling, clinging to the room. And then after 30 minutes it stopped. No more heaviness. Temperature went the same as the rest of the house. Everything felt normal. Priest then says that it decided to go, it knew that it couldn't stay. Fast forward about 2 years and my father and priest friend decided to discuss what exactly happened. Priest begins to explain that for some reason the demon felt an abnormal amount of attraction to that one area, that one bit of the house that was full of malice and anger. Says he researched the house and from what he knows no one was ever killed there, or Indian burial ground or any of that crap. Just something there fed its evil nature. Tells my dad that it's not unheard of for a demon to just choose a random house, and especially a random room, but when it does happen, it happens for a reason. To this day neither the priest nor my parents know why. Now I'm 23 and to this day I still think about that room. I still sleep in it sometimes when I visit my folks, but nothing ever feels off. If you see it, It's just a normal everyday middle-class room. I have had some paranormal experiences here and there since then, some bigger and more unexplainable than others. But nothing ever tops this one, nothing ever gets close to this one. It has always stuck in my mind. It is possibly why I still believe in the paranormal at all. Just the amount of evidence I witnessed firsthand those 2 weeks or so was enough to tell me this isn't all superstition and voodoo. I still wonder sometimes what it was that attracted that thing to my room. Not my parents. Not my sisters. Nowhere in the house. But my room. Maybe demons are just more attracted by toddlers since they are more innocent and easier to corrupt? I'm not theologian, so I can't say for sure. All I know is that in some sick way, I hope I can encounter something like that again. Thanks for reading. I'll probably be back with other stories I've encountered, but I wanted to write this one down because it's always stuck to me.